So, Margaret Wilson. Who here has heard about someone named Margaret Wilson? Okay, I don't see any hands. One hand? Two hands. Okay, well then you'll follow right along. We're going to talk about Margaret Wilson. But before we do that, we're going to have 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. Does someone want to read this for us? A volunteer. Volunteer from the left side.
Your left or my left?
My left.
Oh, okay.
All right. Would you read?
Sure.
Really loud. Or a microphone.
Okay. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends.
Love never ends. Thank you very much. So, since you guys are getting into your teenage years and early 20s, I imagine some of you are thinking about other things in life, such as love. You know, one parent told me that sent his daughter to Southern Adventist University. He was very honest and blunt about why he sent his daughter to Southern Adventist University. He says, the truth is, we don't send our kids honestly, wholly because of education. We are sending them to go find their spouse. And so that is why we send them to Adventist colleges, which most people know is the truth. And he said something else I remember. He says, no matter what people lead you to believe, everyone is secretly looking for their someone in life. Talking about love. So this is pertaining to your age group, so listen carefully. If you're wondering what is true love, okay? What is true love? You have the novels of Happily Ever After, like we've talked about, and you also have the stories we heard about Marie Duran in the tower. But what is true love? Straight coming from the Bible, she read beautifully. Love is what? So if you love someone, you are what? Patient with them. Love is what? Kind. If you love someone, you are? Kind. Love does not what? Envy. Or? So if you love someone, you do not what? What does boast mean? Right. You don't go bragging back home to them, right? Or envy. What is envy? Jealous. You're not jealous of them, right? You want what's best for them. It is not what? Or rude. Everyone understand what arrogant and rude means? Proud and rude, I think that's pretty clear. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. Wow, that's a lot. Are you irritable? Because I know I can be sometimes. And I have to remind myself of that. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. This is the key. Verse 7. Love what? Believes what? Hopes what? Endures what? Love never ends. We're going to talk about this girl. This woman just became a woman. She is 18 years old in this story. So, Margaret Wilson was 18 years old. She was born out of a very prosperous family in Scotland. And her family had a good household, and she had two other sisters. Actually, in this story, I'm going to focus on just the two. And so she realized with her brother, too, that they did not believe that the Church of England was truly the head of the church. Almost the same as Marie Duran, right? She believed that it was God and that the English king was corrupt and that she should not be able or have to believe that the English king was who she had to worship. And so against both tradition and law, McLaughlin first and Marie decided to stand against. Now McLaughlin was a peasant lady, but she was never educated, but very, very wise. And so Marie, she got tired with her sister of all of having to go to church and not believe what they were teaching her. And so she ran off into the mountains because of how badly they were treating her. They were treating her really badly once she started coming to church. And so she ran away and she found Margaret McLaughlin. So Margaret and Margaret, two Margarets, okay? Margaret McLaughlin and Margaret Wilson. So Margaret ran away with her sister and she found Margaret McLaughlin, and together the two girls, the two sisters, with this old lady, started fellowshipping in a house. And they started talking together about how they believed in Jesus, and they had little churches in the house, and soon the neighbors found out, and they tattletaled on them. The neighbors said, "These two Margarets and another little sister, they are worshiping in their house, and they're not being faithful to the king." Do you think the king took that too well, or people who serve the king? No. In fact, it turned out very badly. They brought these two young ladies to court, along with the old lady, Margaret McLaughlin. And so they took them to court, and it was really not a fair trial at all, because they were embarrassed about how their citizens had gone astray, and they just wanted to get rid of it. In fact, I'm not going to quote what exactly they said, because it was very strong language, but "Don't speak of that damned blank," one accuser said. "Let her go to hell." And so they said, "What do we do with these women?" And so they decided what they would do. On April 13, 1685, they were tied to stakes fixed within the flood marks in the water of Blendock, and to be drowned. Now, the father heard that the two daughters were found, and he wanted to go rescue them. His daughter Margaret and the younger one. And so he raised enough money, trying to rally enough money just to save his daughters that were now in court, along with this old lady. And so he got enough money, and he paid for the youngest one's escape and freedom, but it was not in time for the 18-year-old Margaret Wilson. Now, Margaret Wilson, what they did is they truly didn't want her to die. The old lady, like they said, let her go to hell. And so what they did is, on the beaches of Scotland, you'll see that the tide comes in very slowly, and it's a nice gentle slope. And so they had one stake tied farther down the beach, and they tied the older Margaret there. And then they tied the 18-year-old Margaret closer to a stake near the beach. Now, why do you think they did that? Why do you think they did that? Why did they tie the younger one closer? Huh?
No, so she wouldn't die, but she'd be tortured by watching the gun.
Right, because who would she see die?
The lady who helped her.
The lady who helped her. So Margaret sat there with her arms tied at the stake, and she watched the older Margaret as she bobbed up and down, trying to get the breath of air as the ocean slowly came in. Anyone been in the presence of a scary ocean? You know how the ocean roars? Imagine yourself being there, watching as your loved one is tied to a post, and watching them try to get every gasp of air. And finally, watching her die. The water came up to Margaret Wilson near the edge of the beach, and she bobbed up and down, struggling for life, wanting to survive. And as she almost died, they untied her. Untying Margaret Wilson, they brought her up, and they said to her, "What do you think of her now?" young Margaret's tormentors asked. She said, "Think. I see Christ wrestling there," she replied. "Do you not think we are sufferers? No, it is Christ in us, for he sends no one to battle at their own expense." What did she say? That God never sends anyone to battle at their own expense, because who is with them? Christ. She said those words, and as soon as she said that, they brought her back to the stake and decided to push her in the water till she could breathe no more. She died singing the song, In Psalms 25:7, it says, "Remember not the sins of my youth," she cried as she got gasps of air, "or my transgressions according to your steadfast love. Remember me for the sake of your goodness, O Lord." Now, she's 18 years old when this happened in Scotland. 18. Who here is close to 18 years old? Yeah? I see some hands. Could you do that? Could you do that? If it just had to be one conviction, all you had to do was say, okay, I'll go to the church and I will believe like everyone else that the king is great and it's really the king that's the head of the church. That's all that I need to believe, and I won't be tied to a stake and watch my friend die. Could you do that? Or as the water and the storm of waters got higher and higher, would you say, I'm sorry, I changed my mind, I'm too scared. I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want me to do, just untie me. There's a Bible verse, and I think it's fitting. It's in John chapter 15, verse 13. It says, "Greater love hath no man than this." What? What is it? "That a man lay down his life for his friends." What friend did Margaret Wilson and Margaret McLaughlin lay their lives down for? Jesus. Was that true love? True love, that they would lay their life down for a friend. You hear so many stories of evangelists, people in hero history, and they all seem to be older, right? Older people with white hair and wisdom from many ages of experience, not an 18-year-old who has her whole life that hasn't even really begun. There's a quote here. It says, "Love is a choice you make every day, even when it's hard. Love is not just a feeling, it's a commitment to be there for someone no matter what." Let me tell you something. Before you think you can truly love someone, truly love them. It's easy to have a relationship where you enjoy hugging someone, holding their hand, and going, "Oh, I love this guy," or "I love this girl." You know, it's easy to say that. You're like, "Oh, these fuzzy feelings, I can't wait to tell my friends." But that is a totally, entirely different scale than truly loving someone to the point where you can, first of all, do each of these things. You can be patient with them. You can be kind with them. You are not envious of them. You do not boast with them. You are not arrogant. You are not rude. You don't insist on your own way. You just want what you want, and they better go along with it because they're supposed to love you. You're not irritable or resentful. You don't rejoice at wrongdoing. You bear all things. You believe all things. You hope all things. You endure all things. Love never ends. Do you truly love that person? I believe that until you can truly love Jesus in this kind of way and believe he loves you in this kind of way, you cannot expect a humanly relationship to the level as a level you could have with Christ in the center. Love, true love, comes to the point that goes past comfort. It goes past having fun. It gets to the point where you would lay your life down for them. Do you have this love today with Jesus? Can you love him with all your heart? Now, I want to tell you a story. And the story is of something that happened to us in Palau. And so when we were in Palau, I was in 3rd grade. And we had been friends with the chief of the island. The chief of the island was a Seventh-day Adventist that had gone to a Seventh-day Adventist school. And so we came to his house. He was the chief of this village. And we got there expecting to see just, a family and so excited to see this village that loved Jesus. But we got there. And once we got into the airport, my friend was whistling. The security guard came up to her and stopped her. He said, "Stop whistling." And we thought he was joking. And they said, "No, stop whistling. You're going to call down the spirits on us." And so she stopped whistling as ordered by a security guard, and we got to the house of this chief. And when we got there, we drove this little truck over there. And inside the room, they had 2 beds in this long room. And he said to us, "When you sleep at night, you can only point your feet this direction when you sleep. Never sleep with your feet towards that room." And we said, "Are you serious?" And he says, "Yes, that is the sanctuary of all our gods. Do not point your feet towards that room." So, in respect of our hosts, we pointed our feet the other way. And as we woke up the next morning and walked outside of where we were staying, and there was an ark-looking thing where people were coming and dropping money. And we said, what is this? And he says, "Well, inside of this little ark thing, that is where people come and make their offerings to the gods." And in our mind, we're thinking, this guy is a Seventh-day Adventist. What are you doing? But he said, my father talked to him, and he said, "Chief, I thought you loved God. I thought you were a Seventh-day Adventist. Why are you leading your people to do this?" And he said, I'm the chief. I just do what the people want because I'm the chief, and I need to do this as the chief of their village, to have this for them. And so my father tried talking with him, but nothing worked, and so we just prayed. And so every single day we went snorkeling. And it was very fun. And so we'd go snorkeling one place and snorkel the other place. But on one of our last day, we finally went snorkeling to this beach in front of the Capitol building. And it was one of those beaches where you see the ocean tide blue and then the ocean tide green and blue. And you can see the layers of the water. Have you guys seen that before? Beautiful. So we were swimming there. And my mom told me before I got in the water, she says, "Oceana, you have to wear your life jacket." I'm like, "Mom, the other girls don't have to wear their life jackets, and mine has Barbie dolls on it." And she's like, "Oceana, if you want to go swimming, wear your life jacket or you're not going." Fine. So I walked down with my little Barbie doll life jacket, and all these Islander kids were over there, fancy free with just shorts and a shirt, jumping into the water, and I'm with my Barbie doll suit, and I get in the water, and we all start going swimming. My dad had his life jacket, and we had 2 other girls and the chief with us, his 2 daughters. So we started swimming and swimming. He's like, "We're going to go to that darker strip of blue out there." And so we swim, and realize after we get far enough that we're not making any progress. And we're thinking to ourselves, why are we making any progress? And we soon realized that we were caught in a riptide. You know what a riptide is? A riptide is when the water is going one way on top and one way on the bottom. We were caught in the riptide, and once we were caught in the riptide, we soon got into big trouble. One of the girls was losing oxygen as the waves were crashing over her head, and to make the story short, she was dying. Her eyes were changing color, her cheeks were changing color, and they were grabbing onto each side of our life jacket, trying to hold on for life. The chief grabbed a coconut that went past, and one of the girls grabbed my father on the side. And so we started praying together, and my dad said, "I don't know if we'll all go home tonight. But God, one thing I pray is that we'd all see each other in heaven. That's just the one thing we ask of you, God." And there's a long causeway. My mom was out there very far. The wind was strong, and she was taking pictures. And so we were yelling, "Help, help, help!" And she was just going, "Hi." And finally we prayed, and the chief yelled to the top of his lung, "Canoe." And she heard canoe. And she noticed something was wrong, so she took off her flip-flops and barefoot on coral ran all the way back down the causeway. And at that time, the ladies of the other household saw her running, and they dropped to their knees and started praying. The ambulance that had finished for the day and all the workers were having lunch break happened to pull up right then. and they realized something was wrong, grabbed some random guy's boat, pulled it out, and rescued us. We got home, and the chief realized something, that it was only God who had saved his family that day. The next day, he went into that room they called the sanctuary, never entered it in his life, took every rag in that room and burned it. And then we went back to Taiwan where we lived at the time, and he called my father and he said, Mike, you know what I did? And he said, what? He said, I took that ark that my village owns. I put it in the back of my truck and I drove to the ocean and I dumped it in the ocean. He said, our family has gotten baptized, and in that room that we used to worship spirits, it's now become a Filipino Seventh-day Adventist church. Sometimes you have to get to the point of comfort, past comfort, to realize how big your God is. And when you do, I hope that you will be like Margaret, who when you encounter suffering, you say, do you think we are sufferers? No, it is in Christ that is in us, for he sends no one to battle except their own expense. Realize that your God is bigger. Your God is more powerful than the ocean waves. That only your God is the one who has gone to die for you. And whatever you have been through, no matter how big and no matter how small, that it is God's love that paid the ultimate price for your soul.